Frightening scenes of the recent religious terror exploding once again in Pakistan. Groups of Muslims attacking churches and destroying the homes of Christian families. Hi, I'm Christine Persichetti. The most recent violence was sparked by an accusation that a Christian man destroyed the Quran, Islam's holy book. Last week's violence is being felt in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Immaculate Heart of Mary in Windsor Terrace celebrates Mass in Urdu every week for Pakistani Catholics. This Sunday's Mass was especially meaningful for the faithful as they prayed for their Christian family and friends back home. Currents News' Katie Vasquez was there.
Prayers for peace in Brooklyn for a home thousands of miles away. Houses belonging to Christians ransacked and churches set on fire. It's just the latest and one of the most destructive attacks on the minority population in Pakistan.
We always had a little bit of fear of going to the church, especially like on big occasions like Easter and Christmas, because that's where a lot of mass attacks happen.
Sharon Mehek came to the U.S. in 2014, but she remembers how difficult it was to practice her faith. Now she's praying hard for those still living there.
Like being from that part of the world, like we know what it feels like to be a minority, and just if you can't even practice your own faith with freedom.
She is a parishioner at Immaculate Heart of Mary in Windsor Terrace. The church offers the only Urdu Mass in the diocese, a chance for Pakistani Catholics to pray in their native language. The pastor, Father Ilyas Gill, was born and raised there. Now he works to unite Pakistanis from across the tri-state area, from New Jersey to Long Island.
To understand very easily to preaching of Father.
Samson Javed and other Pakistani Catholics came together Sunday to pray for their family and friends as the Bishop of Pakistan called for a day of prayer.
Show our grief and, to come to pray for them.
Twin sisters Angel and Amen Dilawar moved to the Bronx from Pakistan 7 years ago. While the Mass offers a connection to their roots, in the wake of the recent violence, it's a moment to reflect.
That we can freely express our religious beliefs without the shadow of persecution or retribution.
These Catholics will continue to pray for those who can't practice their faith openly. In Windsor Terrace, Katie Vasquez, Currents News.
If you want to attend Mass celebrated in Urdu in the Diocese of Brooklyn, Immaculate Heart of Mary on Fort Hamilton Parkway in Windsor Terrace has one for the Pakistani community in their native language every Sunday at 4:30. Extremist groups in Pakistan frequently target Christians, including an Easter Sunday suicide bombing in 2016 that killed 75. In the most recent rampage, a mob of Islamic extremists burned down 21 churches and destroyed almost 100 homes of Christians.
We are treating these events as a conspiracy against the people of Pakistan to incite violence inside our country.
A group of Pakistani Christians living in Italy are asking their ambassador for more protection for their community. They also want global condemnation for the attacks. Meanwhile, Pakistani officials have arrested dozens of rioters and are giving thousands of dollars to the nearly 100 families whose homes were destroyed. President Joe Biden is vowing to rebuild Maui. The commander-in-chief was on the fire-ravaged island yesterday, meeting with residents and community leaders.
The country grieves with you, stands with you, and will do everything possible to help you recover, rebuild, and respect culture and traditions when the rebuilding takes place.
Biden has been criticized for what some say was a slow response to the wildfires. He was even greeted by protesters who told him to go home. At least 114 people died in the fires, but that number is expected to rise as about 850 are still missing. The White House has sent hundreds of federal search and rescue team members to Maui, and the president assigned a FEMA official to oversee a long-term response. In the wake of the disaster in Maui, I spoke with the Bishop of Honolulu, Larry Silva, who says if you want to help, you can go to the Diocese of Honolulu's website. That's CatholicHawaii.org. You'll see a button labeled Support the Maui Wildfire Relief Efforts on the bottom right. In France, a craftsman is making a special gift for the Holy Father, a custom wheelchair. The engineer paid close attention to detail, designing the chair for Pope Francis's specific needs and using wood with symbolic meaning. Currents News' Andy Madison has the story.
In his workshop in the southwest of France, Paul de Livron is designing a wheelchair he will give to Pope Francis. Paul has been in one himself for almost 10 years after a hiking accident in Marseille. In May this year, following a general audience, he showed the Pope the wheelchair prototype. Paul stated that this new model will be tailored specifically to Pope Francis's needs. It has large armrests for support when standing up. The backrest is made so that Pope Francis can sit for hours at a time. The handles at the back were deliberately made higher so that Sandro Mariotti, the Pope's assistant, does not have to bend over when pushing the chair. Furthermore, the materials the wheelchair is made from are very special.
Le fauteuil roulant du Pape François.
Pope Francis's wheelchair is made primarily of plywood from 2 countries, from Russia and Ukraine. I deliberately used a combination of planks from these 2 countries for the Pope's wheelchair because he has regularly offered to be a mediator between them.
The 2 armrests are made from pieces of wood from the ceiling of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in France, which caught on fire in 2019.
La partie charpente de Notre-Dame de Paris.
It's from the southern part of the frame of Notre Dame in Paris, the early 13th century medieval frame that caught on fire in 2019. I'm lucky enough to have been entrusted with it. 2 beams that survived the fire were completely charred, but I managed to carve the armrests out of them. What's interesting is that these are trees that grew around the year 1200, at the same time as St. Francis of Assisi, Pope Francis's patron saint.
The project costs around $14,000, and that has been raised by crowdfunding. The names of the donors will be given to the Pope together with the wheelchair during his papal trip to Marseille in September. Andy Madison, Currents News.
In the Diocese of Brooklyn, Bishop Robert Brennan reflects on World Youth Day in a new episode of his podcast, Big City Catholics. He speaks about Mary's message in Fatima, that message still true today.
Mary comes speaking a message of peace and a message of mercy. When people are ready to give up on the world, she reminds us that God never gives up on us, and she points us in the direction of mercy.
And he talks to one of the pilgrims about their journey to Fatima. To listen to them and to catch new episodes as they come out every Friday, just go to podcast.dioceseofbrooklyn.org or search for Big City Catholics on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.